The black helicopter had no lights when it dropped onto the hospital roof in the middle of a Norfolk storm. 6 armed men rushed inside and ignored every doctor, every guard, and every administrator in the building. They were looking for the quiet night maintenance man nobody bothered to call by name, and they were looking for his German shepherd. For 3 years, Caleb Mercer had fixed boilers, changed bulbs, and let people believe he was nothing more than the man with the toolbox. But when a wounded Navy commander arrived bleeding out, the whole hospital learned the truth. The maintenance man was a former Navy SEAL. The dog was not just a dog. And the old leather collar around Ranger's neck carried a secret powerful men were willing to kill for. Rain came sideways off the Elizabeth River that night, cold and silver under the parking lot lights of Harbor Point Medical Center. The old hospital near Norfolk's working docks groaned in the wind like a ship that had been asked to stay on land longer than it wanted. Down in the maintenance basement, Caleb Mercer lay on his back beneath the auxiliary generator with a flashlight between his teeth and a wrench in his right hand. The concrete floor had soaked the warmth out of his shoulders 10 minutes ago. He ignored it. Pain was information, and most information did not require immediate action. Beside his left boot, Ranger lifted his head from a square of old moving blanket and sneezed at the smell of diesel. The German shepherd was 6 years old, sable-coated with a black saddle across his back and a muzzle brushed with early silver. One ear stood straight and proud, while the other bent near the tip from an old field injury that had never cared about symmetry. "Bless you," Caleb said around the flashlight. Ranger gave him a look that suggested the blessing was appreciated but late. The generator coughed, settled, and began to hum at the pitch Caleb had been trying to coax from it for the better part of an hour. He tightened the last bolt, slid out, and wiped his hands on a rag that had surrendered its original color some time before Christmas. At Harbor Point, he was the night maintenance man. That was what most people called him when they called him anything at all. "Maintenance, can you look at this light? Maintenance, the sink is making that noise again. Maintenance, why is the elevator stopping on 2 when nobody pressed 2? It was not cruelty, exactly. It was easier than cruelty. It was habit. People made categories when they were tired, and hospitals made people tired faster than almost anywhere else. Caleb stood, rolled one shoulder until it clicked, and checked the generator panel. The green indicator held steady. "One more night," he told it. The generator did not answer, which made it one of the more polite conversations he had had since clocking in. Ranger rose with a soft grunt and shook himself once tags clicking against the old leather collar Noah Brooks had mended with yellow thread. The collar looked ordinary if a person did not know how to look. Most people did not. Caleb clipped the leash to it, though Ranger needed a leash the way a tide needed instructions. They climbed the stairs from the basement into the back corridor, where the air changed from warm metal and oil to disinfectant floor wax and overworked coffee. The hospital was in its night shape. Lights dimmed in long hallways, voices softened. Machines kept their green and blue watch over beds where people tried to sleep through fear fever and the small humiliations of being ill in public. At the nurses' station near pediatrics, Olivia Brooks was taping a paper butterfly to the wall beside a room number. She was a pediatric night nurse with chestnut hair tied low at the neck, eyes the warm brown of strong tea, and a face that looked tired in a way sleep alone could not fix. She saw Caleb and smiled before she saw the toolbox in his hand. That mattered. "The heat is acting up in room 214 again," she said. Acting up or performing badly for attention. Both, probably. From the staff alcove behind her, Noah Brooks leaned around the corner with a contraband cookie in his hand. Noah was 9, small for his age, sharp-eyed, and permanently convinced that every broken object in the world could be improved with tape, string, or bravery. He held the cookie out to Ranger. "Mom said no," he whispered. Ranger accepted the cookie with the solemn dignity of a bishop receiving a crown. Olivia turned just in time to see the last crumb vanish. Noah. He looked hungry. He always looks hungry. Caleb set the toolbox down and checked the thermostat panel outside room 214. That is his training. Olivia gave him a look. To look hungry. To locate weakness. Noah laughed quick and bright, and for half a second the corridor felt less like a hospital. Then the speaker above the desk clicked with static and settled back into silence. Caleb looked up. So did Ranger. No one else did at first. That was the difference between ordinary listening and the kind of listening that had once kept men alive in rooms with no windows. Caleb's hand moved from the thermostat to Ranger's collar. The dog had gone still. Not stiff, still. His nose angled toward the ceiling. At 11:43 at night, the roof shook. The sound came down through the building in layers. First a deep thud that rattled the fluorescent fixtures, then the violent chop of rotor blades beating rain into mist, then the alarmed clatter of a metal tray hitting tile somewhere in the emergency department. Olivia grabbed the desk. Noah's cookie hand froze in midair, suddenly empty and guilty. "Medevac," Olivia said. Caleb did not answer. He was already moving. The rooftop pad had rules, flight plans, radio calls, clearance. This had not sounded like rules. Ranger moved with him, shoulder at Caleb's knee limp, almost invisible until speed made it honest. They reached the main corridor as 2 security guards jogged toward the stairwell and then stopped because 6 men in black tactical gear came through the fire door from above. They did not run like police. They did not spread like frightened men. They entered with the terrible economy of people who already knew what mattered in the room. Rainwater streamed off their sleeves and darkened the floor behind them. Their weapons stayed low. Their eyes did not. The leader was broad across the chest, gray at the temples, and carried his urgency under control like a live wire wrapped in cloth. He scanned the corridor, passed over the guards, the desk, Olivia and Noah, then fixed on Caleb. "Senior Chief Mercer." The title landed in the hallway like a glass dropped onto stone. Olivia turned toward Caleb slowly. The nearest security guard looked at him as if the toolbox had become a weapon by magic. Caleb did not move for one full breath. "Nobody calls me that here," he said. "Yes, Senior," the man answered. "That is why we came." Ranger stepped half a pace forward, head low. The team leader's eyes dropped to the dog and something like relief moved across his face. "And Ranger," he said, "we need both of you." Caleb looked past him toward the stairwell. The rotor blades were still turning overhead. That meant the bird had not shut down. That meant the patient was either not unloaded yet or not expected to be here long. "Who is hurt?" "Commander Thomas Hale." Caleb's hand tightened on the leash. He had not heard that name in 3 years, but the body kept its own records. Some names lived in bone. "How bad?" "Chest wound, abdominal fragmentation, pressure falling, airway unstable." The leader's voice stayed flat, but his throat worked once before he finished. "Our medic is dead." Behind Caleb, Dr. Lauren Bennett came out of the ER with her white coat half-buttoned and a tablet in her hand. She was a capable emergency physician with clear blue eyes, clipped blonde hair, and the posture of a woman who had spent too many years making rooms obey her. "I am the attending," she said. "Bring him to Trauma 1. The team leader did not look away from Caleb. "We asked for Mercer." "He fixes boilers," Bennett said. The silence after that was small and sharp. Caleb set the toolbox gently against the wall. Ranger watched his hand. Olivia watched his face. Noah, for once, did not say anything. "Get Trauma 1 ready," Caleb said. Bennett blinked. "Excuse me?" "Chest decompression supplies. Thoracostomy tray on standby. 4 units. O negative if you have them. Warming blankets. Suction. 2 large bore lines. And someone who can intubate without making a speech about it." Bennett's mouth opened. Nothing useful came out. The tactical leader did not smile. He looked as if he had been holding his breath since the helicopter left wherever it had come from. "Hale is 2 minutes out," he said. Caleb nodded once. "Then move." Ranger turned toward the ER before Caleb did. Halfway down the corridor, the dog stopped so abruptly that the leash snapped tight. His head swung toward the main entrance. His hackles rose in a dark ridge. Caleb followed the dog's gaze and saw nothing but rain-streaked glass, a potted plant, and a night security camera turning slowly on its mount. Then Ranger growled. Low, certain. From somewhere above them, the helicopter doors opened. And from somewhere inside the hospital, a door clicked open that no one had touched. The rain had been falling since dusk, making Norfolk's streets shine black beyond the hospital windows. Inside Harbor Point, the night had begun with the sour smell of burned dust from an old heater, and the kind of quiet that usually meant the building was saving its trouble for later. Caleb Mercer had arrived 7 minutes before his shift, as he always did, because arriving exactly on time felt careless. He had parked on the second level of the garage beside a concrete pillar stained with old rust, and waited until Ranger finished checking the air. The dog had a ritual. He sniffed the wind off the river, the stairwell door, the tire marks near the elevator, and only then allowed the evening to proceed. Caleb had stopped finding that strange a long time ago. At the maintenance desk, Martin Keene had been waiting with a clipboard pressed to his chest, and the wet red face of a man who believed stress was something other people caused him. Keene was the hospital's night administrator, narrow-shouldered, carefully combed, and always dressed as if a board meeting might happen in a supply closet at 2 in the morning. "The East Wing family lounge has a leak," Keene said before Caleb had put down his coffee. "The pediatric heat is spotty again, and Dr. Bennett says Trauma 2 still has that electrical flicker." "Trauma 2 is on your capital replacement list." Keene frowned. "Can you make it less on the list tonight?" "I can make it not kill anyone." "That is not really the tone I need." Caleb looked at him. Keene looked away first. That was how many conversations went. Not because Caleb tried to win them, because silence made people hear themselves. Ranger sat at his side and watched Keene's polished shoes with open suspicion. "The dog cannot be in restricted areas," Keene said. "He is cleared." "By whom?" "People who answer phones you do not want to call." Keene did not like that answer, but he liked paperwork even less. He waved them off. So Caleb worked. He changed a cracked valve under a sink while a surgical resident stepped over his legs without apology. He reset a jammed medication dispenser while two nurses debated whether he was allowed to touch it and then used it the second it opened. He replaced a bulb above the chapel door and paused there longer than the job required. The chapel smelled faintly of candle wax and old wood. Hospitals kept chapels for people who had run out of other rooms. Caleb had used them in 3 countries without once turning on the lights. At 9:10 at night, Dr. Lauren Bennett found him near the ER supply wall. "Maintenance," she called. Caleb tightened the last screw on a loose oxygen bracket. "Mercer." "What?" "My name." She glanced at his badge, then back at the bracket. "Fine, Mercer, Trauma 1. Needs 2 more portable suction units. Already checked and staged. Trauma 3. Battery on the backup monitor replaced. The linen warmer. Not my favorite patient, but stable." Bennett stared at him for a beat. She was not cruel. She was busy proud and shaped by a profession that rewarded quick sorting. Caleb had been sorted. "Good," she said almost reluctantly and walked away. Ranger sneezed. "No editorial comments," Caleb murmured. The dog sneezed again. At 9:40, Olivia asked for help in pediatrics. That was how Caleb ended up in room 214, with his left hand inside a wall panel, while Noah sat cross-legged on the floor and tried to convince Ranger to hold a plastic dinosaur in his mouth. Ranger refused the dinosaur. He had standards. "He was a soldier dog, right?" Noah asked. Caleb checked a wire connection. "Something like that." "Were you a soldier too?" Olivia, standing by the doorway with a medication cup, looked sharply at her son. "Noah?" "What?" "You do not ask people things like that." Caleb did not answer immediately. He had spent 3 years not answering, and 3 years could make silence feel like a second skin. But Noah was not a threat. He was a boy, with a dinosaur, a missing front tooth, and a sincerity so complete it made lies feel shabby. "I was Navy," Caleb said. Noah's eyes widened. "On ships?" "Sometimes." "Did Ranger go on ships?" Ranger finally took the dinosaur, held it with patient misery for 2 seconds, and dropped it into Noah's lap. "He says that is classified," Caleb said. Noah laughed. Olivia did not. She studied Caleb with the look she sometimes got when he said too little, and somehow made that feel more revealing than too much. "You never talk about it," she said quietly. "Most of it is boring." "I doubt that." "You would be amazed how much of national security involves waiting in bad chairs." That earned a smile. Small but real. The heater clicked on at last, pushing warm air through the vent. Noah raised both hands like the room had been saved from a dragon. Caleb closed the panel. For a moment, the ordinary held. Then he saw the reflection of Ranger in the dark window. The dog had stopped playing. His ears were lifted, one straight and one bent. His nose moved once toward the north corridor. Caleb followed the direction, but the hall was empty. Not empty. Cleared. There was a difference. The memory came before he could push it down. A corridor in a school converted into a field clinic. Heat so heavy it felt like a hand over the mouth. A radio message that sent his team down a route only 7 people should have known. The white flash. The smell of copper dust and burned plastic. Petty Officer Daniel Briggs laughing about bad coffee 20 minutes before he stopped having a face anyone could recognize. Ranger beside Caleb in the smoke, dragging a wounded interpreter by the sleeve because the man was too stunned to crawl. Then the reports afterward. The wrong extraction time printed as if it had always been that way. The casualty location shifted by 6 miles. The supply manifest amended to explain equipment that had never arrived. Caleb had noticed the small things first. Small things were where lies had to work hardest. He copied what he could. He reported what he knew. 2 weeks later, he became a problem to be removed. Rear Admiral Victor Sloan signed the paperwork with a pen that probably cost more than Caleb's truck. Conduct unbecoming. Loss of confidence. Administrative separation. Words so clean they almost did not smell like fear. Caleb had left the Navy with a duffel bag, a wounded dog, and a microdrive he had hidden in the only place no one in that room had thought to search. Not in his boot, not in his car, not in a safe deposit box. On Ranger, in plain sight beneath a scarred leather collar that people mistook for sentiment. Since then, Harbor Point had become his hiding place. Hospitals were good places to disappear if a person did useful work and asked for nothing. The building always needed something fixed. People always preferred the person fixing it to remain background. Caleb gave them what they wanted. Until the roof shook. Until the helicopter came. Until Master Chief Aaron Pierce walked through the door and called him senior in front of everyone. Now the past had arrived, wet, armed, and bleeding. Commander Thomas Hale came into Trauma 1 at 11:51 at night, under a sheet spotted dark with rain and blood. He was broad, even unconscious, gray-haired at the temples, with the lined face of a man who had spent most of his life outdoors in places where weather was the least dangerous thing present. His oxygen mask was fogged. His chest rose wrong. His left side barely moved at all. Pressure is 68 over palp, the transport operator said. Sat is 86 and falling. Bennett stepped toward the bed. Caleb was already at Hale's left shoulder. Ranger stood near the door, every muscle ready. Needle, Caleb said. Bennett turned. You are not credentialed to perform that procedure here. Caleb looked at Hale's throat. The trachea had shifted. The man had maybe minutes. Then credential me later. Bennett's face hardened. This is my ER. Then keep him alive in it. The room held its breath. Pierce moved half a step closer, not threatening, just present. Bennett looked at Hale, then at the monitor, then at Caleb's hands. Something in her expression changed. Not trust, recognition of math. Do it, she said. Caleb took the needle. Ranger growled again from the doorway. This time the growl was not for Hale. It was for the hall behind them. Caleb found the second intercostal space. The storm hit the windows. The lights flickered once. Then he drove the needle in, and the hidden air inside Hale's chest came out with a hiss. Every person in the room heard. The storm pressed hard against Harbor Point, rattling the ambulance bay doors and smearing red light across the wet pavement outside. In Trauma 1, the air was hot with blood, antiseptic wet clothing, and the metallic breath of machines trying to keep up with a dying man. Commander Thomas Hale's oxygen number climbed from 86 to 89 to 92. Not enough. Enough to keep going. Caleb pulled the needle free, secured the catheter, and looked at the monitor before anyone said the number aloud. Pressure. 74 over 40, a nurse said. Better. Better is not stable, Caleb answered. Dr. Lauren Bennett moved to Hale's head, her gloved hands adjusting the oxygen mask with controlled precision. Airway is holding for now. For now is doing a lot of work. I know. That was the first useful thing she had said to him all night, and Caleb respected it. He cut away the field dressing at Hale's abdomen and saw the shrapnel pattern. 2 entry wounds, low left. 1 ragged tear near the ribs. Field packing soaked, but still doing its job. The transport operator, a young sailor, with rain dripping from his jaw, looked like he might be sick. Ranger looked at him once, and then returned his attention to the doorway. "Name," Caleb said without looking up. "Petty Officer Ryan Vale." Ryan Vale was lean, pale under the tan, and carried terror with both hands while trying not to drop it. "Vale, you stay where I can see you." "Yes, Senior." Bennett heard the title again. This time she did not react. 2 large-bore IVs, Caleb said. "Already in," one of the ER nurses answered. "Warm the blood." "Blood warmer is slow." "Then use the rapid infuser in trauma 2. "It has been sticking." Caleb looked at Bennett. Bennett looked toward the hall. "I thought you said it was fixed." "I said it would not kill anyone," Caleb said. That was a different review category. For 1 sharp second, Olivia, who had appeared near the doorway with a pediatric crash cart she had commandeered for supplies, laughed under her breath. It broke the room's fear just enough for people to move again. Caleb pointed to the nurse nearest the door. "Get the infuser." The nurse ran. Hale groaned once, a low sound that seemed dragged from somewhere below consciousness. His right hand twitched. Pierce stepped closer. Master Chief Aaron Pierce had a square, weathered face, deep-set eyes, and the kind of stillness that only came from years of not wasting motion. He looked at Hale with more than command concern. Caleb saw it and filed it. He was hit 40 minutes before extraction. 42, Pierce said. Field TXA. Given. Tourniquets. Left thigh. Removed during transport when bleeding was controlled. Who knew the route? Pierce's jaw tightened. 6. The answer moved through Caleb like cold water. And one sold it. No one corrected him. Bennett looked from Caleb to Pierce. "What is this?" "A patient who still needs a spleen when we get him upstairs," Caleb said. "Stay with that." Bennett's eyes flashed, but she stayed. That mattered too. Ranger barked once. Not loud, not warning. Signal. Caleb turned his head. The dog stood at the doorway with his nose pointed toward the hall that led to the main entrance. His hackles were raised again. Not at the blood, not at the men, at something else. "Pierce." "I see him." "You cannot see what he smells." Pierce touched his earpiece. "South entrance report." Static answered. The sound crawled over the walls. The lights flickered again, then steadied. Caleb heard Olivia behind him. "Noah is in the staff alcove." "Move him to pediatric safe room." "I was going to." "Now." She did not argue. That was one of the reasons he trusted her. She vanished into the corridor at a fast walk that did not look like panic, because nurses learned early that panic made everyone look at you. The rapid infuser arrived with a squeal of wheels and a curse from the nurse pushing it. Caleb plugged it in, hit the side panel with the heel of his hand, and the motor caught. Bennett stared at him. "That is your repair method?" "Only when it likes me." Does it? Tonight, it had better. The first warmed blood ran in. Hale's pressure rose to 82 systolic. Caleb palpated the abdomen, watching for rigidity, watching for the smallest signs that the body was losing a fight behind the skin. Ranger barked again, sharper now. From the main corridor came the soft click of a door latch. No alarm, no raised voices, just a door accepting a code. Pierce lifted his rifle to low ready. Bennett saw it and went still. "This is a hospital," she said. "Yes," Caleb answered. "That is why they are using doors instead of explosives." The monitors beeped. Rain slapped the windows. Ryan Vale looked at Caleb with wide eyes. "Senior Commander Hale said you would know what this meant." Caleb kept his hands on the dressing. "Did he?" "He said if we had to come here, it meant the leak was higher than he could prove." Pierce glanced at the young sailor. "Vale?" "He said it, Master Chief." Caleb pressed fresh gauze into place and watched the blood bloom dark through white. "What else did he say?" Vale swallowed. "He said you left a trail." The room seemed to contract. Bennett's hands slowed. Caleb did not look up because if he looked up, the past might come into the room more fully than he could afford. "He was wrong," Caleb said. Pierce answered quietly, "No, Senior." Caleb looked at him then. Pierce's face had the hard regret of a man bringing news late to someone who had paid for it early. "Hale found your server archive 8 months ago," Pierce said. "It cracked open 3 dead ends and put us on Sloan." "The archive was bait." "We know that now." "You were supposed to know that before touching it." "Rachel Monroe did." That name meant nothing to Bennett, but it landed differently for Pierce. "She told Hale there had to be a second source." Caleb's gaze moved to Ranger's collar. The old leather lay against the dog's neck, dark with rain, patched with Noah's yellow thread. Ranger did not move. He knew when to become stone. "Where is Monroe?" Pierce touched his earpiece again. Static, longer this time. Then nothing. The lights died. They did not dim. They vanished. For 3 seconds, the trauma bay became all breathing and rain. Then emergency power came up in strips of dull amber along the floor and ceiling. The room looked lower, older, less forgiving. The monitor over Hale's bed ran on battery, green numbers glowing like something alive underwater. Ranger was no longer at the doorway. Caleb's stomach tightened. "Ranger!" A scrape sounded in the hall, then a man's breath, then a low snarl. Caleb moved before Bennett could speak. He reached the doorway in time to see Ranger pinning a man in dark civilian clothing against the wall, teeth locked in the sleeve of his jacket. Not tearing, not wasting force, simply holding him where he had no wish to be held. The man had a suppressed pistol halfway out of his coat pocket. Pierce was on him in the next breath. Bennett whispered something that might have been a prayer. Caleb looked down at the man. Oil on the cuffs, powder under the nails, hospital access badge clipped upside down. Ranger released only when Caleb touched his collar. "Who sent you?" Caleb asked. The man looked at him, then at the dog, and fear finally reached his eyes. From the far end of the dark corridor, another door opened, and someone began walking toward them without hurry. Emergency light painted the Harbor Point corridor in a dull amber that made every face look carved from wax. Outside, thunder rolled over Norfolk and disappeared into the larger sound of rain on glass, rain on roof vents, rain on the black helicopter still beating air above the hospital. The man Ranger had caught lay on his stomach with Pierce's knee between his shoulder blades and his pistol kicked beneath a supply cart. Ranger stood over him, breathing hard through his nose, offended in the deep, personal way of a professional who had found sloppy work. Caleb crouched and took the access badge from the man's coat. The photograph showed a different face. The name read Daniel Price, Facilities Technician. Daniel Price was on vacation in Ohio. Caleb had approved the schedule swap himself. "Not hospital staff," he said. Dr. Lauren Bennett stood just inside Trauma 1, one hand still gloved red from Hale's blood, the other gripping the door frame. "How did he get a badge?" "He did not get one," Caleb said. "Someone gave it to him." The words moved down the hall and found Martin Keene as he hurried around the corner. Keene's tie was crooked, his hair damp at the temples, and his expression was that of a man who had prepared for liability, but not danger. "What is happening here?" Pierce looked up from the pinned intruder. "You tell us." Keene stopped. "I beg your pardon." Caleb held up the badge. "Daniel Price is in Ohio." Keene blinked too fast. "There must be a clerical issue." "There is a man with a gun wearing his badge." "I said there must be an issue." "That is a very brave word for treason." Keene's mouth worked soundlessly. For a moment, Caleb almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Cowardice was not always evil, but evil liked cowardice because it rented cheap space. Behind Caleb Hale's monitor alarmed once. Bennett turned instantly. "Pressure is dropping." The hospital came back to its oldest truth. Whatever men did in hallways, the body on the bed still had to be saved. Caleb pointed at Pierce. "Secure him, search him, and get every working entrance covered." Pierce nodded. "Copy." Caleb looked at Keene. "You are going to stay where Master Chief Pierce can see you." "I do not answer to him." Pierce rose slowly. "Tonight you do." Keene looked at the rifle, then at Caleb, then at the dog. Ranger sneezed. It was not dignified, but it was timely. Caleb went back into Trauma 1. Bennett was already adjusting the blood flow. "He needs the OR." "Yes." "Now." "Yes." "The main elevator is exposed." Caleb wiped his hands and looked at the hospital map in his head. 3 public elevators, 2 service elevators, 1 older freight lift near laundry that hated everyone, but usually obeyed Caleb if asked firmly. The surgical floor was 2 levels up. The shortest path was also the most obvious. "Service corridor east," he said. "Through central supply, past laundry, freight lift to 2, then pre-op." Bennett stared at him. "That elevator stalls." "Only when insulted." "I am serious." "So am I." Ryan Vale, the young sailor, stood near Hale's feet with his jaw clenched so hard the muscles jumped. "I can help push." "You will manage the IV lines," Caleb said. "Do not look at him like a commander for the next 10 minutes. Vale blinked. "What?" "Look at him like tubing, airway, blood, and gravity." The young man nodded once. It was a hard instruction, but a kind one. People could drown in who they loved during an emergency. Tasks gave them a boat. Olivia appeared at the rear door, breath quick, face pale. "Noah is in the pediatric safe room with Maria and 2 kids from 218. "Good." "The phones are strange." "Strange how?" "Internal calls work sometimes. Outside lines are dead, and the security office is not answering." Caleb looked at Pierce through the glass. Pierce was hearing the same report through his earpiece and did not like it. "Soft lockdown," Caleb said. No overhead announcement. Bennett looked toward him sharply. You cannot order a hospital lockdown. I just did. Olivia was already moving. I will tell charge. Bennett's eyes followed her. She listens to you. No, Caleb said. She listens to the part that makes sense. The team moved Hale. Beds in hospitals were built like stubborn animals, too heavy when speed mattered, and too delicate when anger would have helped. The left front wheel pulled toward every wall. Vale walked backward with the IV pole, lips moving silently as he counted bags and lines. Bennett stayed at the head, one hand on the oxygen mask. Caleb moved at the side, watching Hale the corridor, the wheels, and Ranger all at once. Ranger ranged ahead 10 feet, nose down, body low. He moved differently in work. Not like a pet, not even like a guard dog, like a memory made flesh. They crossed Central Supply under amber lights that hummed as if electricity had become reluctant. Shelves of gauze and tubing rose around them in long, pale rows. The smell of cardboard plastic wrap and disinfectant was sharp enough to taste. Halfway through, Ranger stopped. Caleb lifted a closed fist. Everyone froze. Bennett froze last, but she did freeze. From beyond the laundry doors came a whisper of rubber soles. One person, maybe two. Ranger looked back at Caleb. His bent ear twitched. Caleb pointed to the left aisle. Pierce's second operator, a compact woman named Diaz with rainwater still on her vest, slipped forward without a sound. The laundry doors opened 2 inches. A hand appeared first, then a suppressed pistol. Diaz hit the door with her shoulder so hard the man behind it went down among carts of clean sheets. The pistol fired once into the ceiling. The sound was small and awful. Hale's monitor shrieked. "Move," Caleb said. They moved. The freight elevator waited at the end of the hall with its battered steel doors closed. Caleb pressed the button. Nothing happened. "Mercer," Bennett said, "do not start." "I did not say anything." "You were breathing like you wanted to." Caleb hit the panel with the heel of his hand. The elevator groaned awake. "You have a concerning relationship with machines," Bennett said. "They know where they stand." The doors opened. They pushed Hale inside. For 8 seconds they were sealed in a small metal box with one dying commander, one doctor, one former Navy SEAL, one frightened sailor, one German shepherd, and the smell of wet wool and blood. Hale's pressure cuff cycled. 70/38. Bennett went still. He is crashing. Caleb looked at the numbers, then at the ceiling, then at Ranger, who had turned toward the elevator doors before they opened. The dog growled. The doors parted onto the surgical floor. At the far end of the hallway, Rear Admiral retired Victor Sloan stood beneath the emergency lights in a dark overcoat, silver hair immaculate, hands folded over the handle of a black cane. He looked at Caleb as if 3 years had been no time at all. "Mr. Mercer," Sloan said, "you have something that belongs to the government." Ranger stepped in front of Caleb and showed his teeth. Rain scraped across the surgical floor windows like fingernails on a closed door. The second level of Harbor Point smelled of sterilized linen cold coffee and the hard chemical bite of pre-op scrub. Victor Sloan stood at the end of the hall as if the hospital had been expecting him. He was in his 60s, tall, silver-haired, and dressed with a formality that made every other person in the corridor look temporary. His dark overcoat was dry. That was the first thing Caleb noticed. Men who arrived honestly through a rainstorm carried weather with them. Sloan carried none. Ranger's growl deepened. Caleb kept one hand on Hale's bed rail and the other near the dog's collar. "Admiral," he said. Retired, Sloane answered. Titles matter. Only when they are earned. Bennett glanced between them, and Caleb could feel her questions gathering. She had a patient crashing in an elevator bay, an armed tactical team in her hospital, a retired admiral blocking the path to surgery, and a maintenance man everyone suddenly called Senior Chief. It was a lot before midnight. Move, she said to Sloane. Sloane gave her a courteous look. Doctor, I appreciate the pressure you are under. No, you do not. Bennett surprised herself with the sharpness of it. Caleb almost smiled. Almost. Sloane's eyes returned to Hale. Commander Hale is involved in a classified matter. Commander Hale is bleeding into my bedsheets, Bennett said. That is the matter I am involved in. Pierce stepped from the elevator behind them, rifle low. Sir, step aside. Sloane looked at Pierce with mild disappointment. Master Chief Aaron Pierce, still loyal to wounded men, even when they walk you into disasters. Especially then. The reply cost Pierce nothing and seemed to irritate Sloane more than anger would have. Caleb leaned close to Bennett. OR now. You are coming. Until the doors. They pushed the bed forward. Sloane did not move at first. Ranger did. The dog advanced 3 steps, head low, ears, uneven eyes fixed on Sloane's cane. The cane was too heavy at the base. Not much. Enough. Sloane's hand tightened. Caleb saw it. So did Pierce. Cane on the floor, Pierce said. Do not be theatrical. Cane on the floor. Sloane smiled thinly. You would draw down on a retired flag officer in a civilian hospital. If the retired flag officer brought a weapon to a surgical floor, yes. Bennett breathed once through her nose and pushed Hale's bed past them while Sloane decided how many witnesses were too many. That was the trouble with power. It preferred rooms where other people were absent. Pre-op opened around Hale in a rush of blue gowns and startled faces. The on-call surgeon, Dr. Angela Park, arrived with black hair twisted into a knot, glasses low on her nose, and the calm irritation of someone dragged from sleep for a good reason. She looked at Hale, then at Caleb. Give me the short version. Penetrating chest trauma. Left tension relieved by needle decompression. Abdominal fragmentation 2. Packed wounds. Possible splenic injury. Possible liver involvement. 2 units O negative. In pressure, unstable. TXA given in field. Park nodded. Allergies. Unknown. Medications. Unknown. Helpful. Alive. Also helpful. She pointed to Bennett. You with me. Then to Caleb. You stay within shouting distance. Hale disappeared through the operating room doors. Ryan Vale watched him go with the blank face of a young man trying to keep his heart from following. The doors closed. For the first time since the helicopter hit the roof, Caleb had no hand on the bleeding man. That was when the rest of the night came back. Sloane stood in the hall with Pierce's rifle angled toward his chest, and Ranger between them. The retired admiral's cane now lay on the floor. Diaz opened the base with a gloved hand and removed a narrow ceramic blade. Sloane looked bored. A precaution. For whom? Caleb asked. You always did ask the wrong questions. No, sir. Caleb's voice stayed even. I asked the right ones too early. Sloane's eyes hardened for 1 second, and the old office came back around Caleb, a processing room with beige walls, a clerk who could not meet his eyes, papers stamped in blue ink, Ranger waiting outside with stitches still under his fur, Sloane behind a desk saying the Navy had lost confidence. The Navy had not lost confidence. The Navy had lost patience with a man who had copied the wrong files before the wrong people could erase them. "Where is the drive?" Sloane asked. Pierce looked at Caleb. Ryan Vale looked too. Even Bennett, through the round OR window, glanced back before the surgical team pulled her fully inside. Caleb looked at Ranger. "What drive?" Sloane's smile returned. "The archive is gone." "Then you wasted a trip." "The archive was never the concern." Caleb felt the words settle. Sloane knew there was another source. Not where, not how, but enough. "You have spent 3 years under a hospital fixing pipes," Sloane said. "Did you imagine that was noble?" "No." "Then what was it?" "Quiet." The answer struck something because Sloane's face changed. Only slightly. Enough for Caleb to know he had touched the truth. Sloane feared quiet people. They did not announce what they had noticed. From the stairwell came urgent footsteps. Olivia appeared, with Noah behind her, one hand on his shoulder, both breathing hard. Caleb's chest tightened before his face could. Noah's eyes went straight to Ranger. "Mr. Caleb, they said we had to move again." "Who said?" Olivia swallowed. "A security guard. I did not know." Ranger left Sloane and went to Noah, pressing his head against the boy's hip. Noah grabbed the dog's fur with both hands. Sloane watched the movement with a sudden, precise interest. Too precise. Caleb saw it and wished Noah had never touched the collar in front of him. "How touching," Sloane said. Olivia looked at him as if she had just found something spoiled in a clean room. "Who are you?" "Someone trying to keep a bad situation from becoming worse." "That is what people say when they made it bad." Pierce made a sound that might have been a laugh if there had been more room for it. Sloane did not appreciate it. His phone buzzed once. He looked down. His face did not change, but his shoulders adjusted. Message received. Plan changed. Caleb knew the movement. "Your people lost the ER," Caleb said. Sloane looked up. "My people? You can retire a title, Admiral." Caleb nodded toward the ceramic blade. "Habits stay active." Before Sloane could answer, Ranger snapped his head toward the north stairwell. A soft beep sounded there. Access granted. Pierce lifted his rifle. Diaz moved to the wall. Noah whispered, "Ranger." The stairwell door opened. Smoke rolled out first, thin and gray. Then the fire alarm began to scream. And somewhere behind the noise, Caleb heard a child cough. The fire alarm turned the surgical floor into red pulses and hard echoes. Outside the north stairwell, smoke curled along the ceiling in a dirty gray ribbon that smelled wrong for fire. Not electrical. Not plastic. Training smoke. Caleb knew the smell before his mind named it. Someone wanted movement, confusion, doors opening, people looking up instead of forward. "It is not a real fire," he said. Bennett had come out of the OR, still in sterile gown, mask hanging at her throat, eyes furious. "The alarm panel says pediatrics." Olivia went white. Noah's fingers dug into Ranger's fur. Caleb looked at Pierce. "Hold surgical." "Senior." Hale is still the anchor. Pierce understood. If Hale died, half the case died with him. If the OR got breached, everything else became noise around a body. Pierce nodded once. Diaz with Mercer. Diaz fell in beside Caleb. She was short, compact, dark-haired, and carried herself like a closed knife. Ranger pulled toward the stairs. Noah tried to follow. Olivia caught him. No! Ranger is going. You are staying with me. The boy looked at Caleb. There was trust in his face. That was heavier than fear. Stay with your mom, Caleb said. Ranger and I will check it. He does not like smoke. He likes you more. Noah nodded because children sometimes accept hard things better than adults when the truth is spoken plainly. Caleb took the east stair down with Ranger ahead and Diaz behind. The smoke thickened between levels. The emergency lights made it look red at the edges. Ranger's limp showed on the stairs, but he did not slow. At pediatrics, the hallway was half dark and full of confused voices. Olivia's charge nurse, Maria Santos, was moving children toward the far safe room with a blanket over one arm and a phone in the other. Maria was broad-faced, gray-streaked, and so calm she looked almost angry. Not fire, Caleb called. I know, Maria said. Sprinklers did not trip. How many missing? None from my rooms. That should have eased him. It did not. Ranger went past Maria and turned toward the staff alcove where Noah had sat earlier with his cookies and dinosaur. The dog sniffed once and growled. On the floor near the vending machine lay a strip of yellow thread, Noah's thread. Caleb crouched. It had been cut clean. Diaz saw it. The boy. No, he is upstairs. Then why leave that? To tell us they know what matters. Ranger moved again, nose low, following scent through smoke that was meant to blind eyes, but not a working dog's memory. They passed the family lounge, the medication room, and the service door to the old laundry chute. The door should have been locked. It was open a finger's width. Caleb pointed. Diaz took the hinge side. He took the handle. Ranger stood back, vibrating with contained violence. Caleb opened the door. A man lunged out with a pry bar. Diaz caught his wrist. Caleb drove a shoulder into his chest, and Ranger took the man's lower sleeve before the pry bar hit tile. The three of them went down hard. The man grunted once and stopped fighting when Diaz put a knee on his ribs. He was in a hospital security jacket. The jacket was real. The man inside was not. Caleb searched him quickly and found a phone, zip ties, a badge, and a folded photograph of Noah walking Ranger near the parking garage. Cold passed through Caleb. Not fear, the thing beneath it, the part with teeth. Diaz looked at the photograph. They are using the kid. Trying to. The man's lip bled where it had hit the floor. He smiled anyway. Collar. Ranger's teeth tightened until the man gasped. Caleb touched the dog's head. Easy. The dog released, but not because he wanted to. Who wants it? The man said nothing. Diaz pressed the man's own zip tie around his wrists with efficient contempt. Caleb held up the phone. The screen had one unsent message. Target confirmed with nurse and child. Dog collar, likely container. Bring boy if needed. Caleb read it twice. Then he looked toward the ceiling, toward Olivia and Noah on the surgical floor. The enemy had not taken Noah because they could not get to him yet. That was not mercy. That was scheduling. The phone buzzed in Caleb's hand. Unknown number. Diaz looked at him. Caleb answered without speaking. A man's voice came through smooth and close. Mr. Mercer, you have always been difficult to reach. That depends who is calling. A practical man. Not tonight. The caller, please. Ranger stared at the phone as if voices had sent. You are not Sloan, Caleb said. No. Then he is not the top. Rear Admiral Sloan was useful for doors. The voice sounded almost amused. I own the rooms. Caleb looked at the tied man on the floor. Name. Names are for introductions. Then introduce yourself badly. A pause. Graham Whitaker. Diaz mouthed the name as if memorizing it. Caleb did too. Graham Whitaker. Defense contracts. Medical evacuation suppliers. Cold money wrapped in clean offices. The shape of the network sharpened. You are in the building, Caleb said. I am where I need to be. You sent men after children. I sent men after leverage. The calm of it was worse than anger. Caleb stood very still. Ranger leaned against his leg, not for comfort, for readiness. Listen carefully, Whitaker said. Commander Hale will not survive unless certain records remain buried. He is in surgery. Surgeries fail. Not tonight. Faith is admirable in church, Mr. Mercer. Hospitals have chapels. Bring the caller to the third-floor administration office in 10 minutes, or Mrs. Brooks learns how expensive loyalty can be. The line clicked dead. Diaz cursed softly. Caleb looked down the hall as smoke thinned under the vents. Pediatrics was settling. Children were safe for the moment. The OR was not. Olivia and Noah were not. Ranger's collar was suddenly the most dangerous object in Norfolk. Caleb unclipped the leash. Ranger looked up at him. Find Olivia. The dog turned and ran, nails striking sparks of sound from the tile. Caleb started after him. Behind them, the fake security guard laughed once. He said 10 minutes. Caleb stopped and looked back. Then he should have asked for less. The rain eased for the first time after midnight, leaving Norfolk wrapped in a wet hush that made every siren sound farther away than it was. Inside Harbor Point, the surgical floor had become a small country, with guarded borders, whispered orders, and one operating room at its heart. Ranger reached Olivia before Caleb did. The dog came around the corner so fast, his paws slid on the polished floor, then recovered with wounded dignity and pressed himself between Olivia and the stairwell door. Olivia had Noah behind her, one arm across his chest like a seatbelt. Her face told Caleb she already knew enough to be afraid and not enough to know where to put the fear. What happened? She asked. Caleb looked at Noah first. The boy was pale but standing. No blood, no restraints, no strange hands on him. They know about the collar. Noah looked down at Ranger. Because of me. Because of them. But I told a guard I fixed it. You told the truth to someone dressed like safety. Caleb crouched so the boy did not have to look up at him. That is not your sin. Noah's eyes filled, and he fought it with the ferocity of a child who thought tears might make him smaller. Olivia's hand moved to his hair. Caleb. He stood. Whitaker is here. Pierce, who had been listening from near the OR doors, turned. Graham Whitaker. Rachel Monroe answered before Caleb could. Yes. She came through the west stairwell with 2 federal agents and a bruise darkening along her jaw. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Monroe was lean, dark-eyed, and rain-soaked through the shoulders of a civilian coat that did not hide the authority in the way she walked. Her hair was pinned back, badly, as if someone had tried to stop her arrival and failed to make it permanent. She carried a leather evidence satchel in one hand and a folder in the other. "He was not supposed to be in Virginia," she said. "His flight plan showed Chicago." "His voice showed third-floor administration," Caleb said. Rachel looked at Ranger, then the caller, then Caleb. "You have it." "Yes." Her face changed, but only a little. People who worked long investigations learned not to celebrate in hallways. "Sloan?" she asked. Pierce nodded toward an empty consultation room where Sloan sat under guard hands, visible face composed. "Contained." "Not enough." "Agreed." Olivia looked from one uniformed person to another. "I need someone to explain why my son is part of this." The hallway quieted. There were alarms behind the OR doors, soft footfalls from nurses, rainwater dripping from Rachel's coat. But the human quiet was deeper. Caleb turned to Olivia fully. 3 years ago, a route for a Navy medical evacuation was sold. His voice stayed steady, though the words had old edges. "My team walked into the result." Olivia's hand tightened on Noah's shoulder. "You were hurt." "Others were worse." Ranger sat at Caleb's side. The dog did not like this story. He never had. "I found altered reports, money transfers, and names hidden behind contractors." Caleb looked toward Sloan. "When I reported it, the people involved removed me before I could get the evidence outside their reach. So you hid it." "I protected it." "In Ranger's collar." "Part of it." Noah looked wounded again. "I sewed over it." "You helped hide it better." That was true, and it landed. Noah swallowed. "With yellow thread." "Best thread in the building." Ranger nudged the boy's knee. Rachel stepped closer. "Mr. Mercer, if the microdrive contains the financial signatures Hale believed it contains, I can tie Sloan and Whitaker to at least 5 compromised operations." "It does." "Then I need it in chain of custody now." Caleb did not answer. Rachel understood the silence. "You do not trust me." "I do not know you." "Hale does." "Hale is under anesthesia." "Fair." She opened the folder and held out a warrant, the pages damp at one corner. "Signed by a federal judge."
"Cross-authorized through NCIS and the DOD Inspector General." Caleb read the names, the time, the seal, the language. He looked for the small things first. Small things were where lies had to work hardest. It held. "Whitaker wants the collar in 10 minutes, he said. "Then he does not know how it opens." "No." "Does Sloan?" "No." Rachel exhaled. "Good." Bennett came out of the OR before anyone could say more. Her mask hung loose. Her forehead shone with sweat, and her eyes found Caleb first. "Hale is alive." Ryan Vale made a sound that broke in the middle. Bennett held up one hand. "He is not safe." That hand kept hope from running too far ahead. "We found splenic injury and liver laceration." "Can Park control it?" Caleb asked. "She thinks so." "You?" Bennett's mouth tightened. "I think if he had arrived 20 minutes later, there would be nothing to control."
The words moved through the hall. Pierce closed his eyes once. Caleb put the reaction away for later, because later was where feelings belonged until later arrived. Rachel looked toward administration. "We need Whitaker alive and talking." "He has 2 men upstairs," Caleb said. "Maybe more." "My agents can take the east stair." "He will expect official doors." Rachel studied him. "What does he not expect?" Caleb looked at the floor plan in his head. The 3rd floor administration suite shared a wall with the old records office, and the old records office had a service chase behind the shelving that maintenance used twice a year when the chilled water sensors failed. No one remembered it because no one wanted to. "Me." Olivia stepped forward. "No." That single word held more force than half the rifles in the hall. Caleb looked at her. "He threatened you." "Yes, and I am standing here." "Olivia." "Do not use that voice like it makes the choice already made." For a moment, the hallway was not a tactical problem. It was a woman with tired eyes, refusing to be placed gently on a shelf. "You are not going up there," Caleb said. "No," she answered. "I am staying with Noah." Her voice softened but did not weaken. "But you are not going alone." Ranger stood. That settled it in the dog's mind. Caleb touched the collar, then the metal name tag beneath it. Whitaker wanted leather. The truth was under steel. "Rachel, take Pierce and cover the main approach." "You are bait," Rachel said. "No." Caleb looked toward the dim east corridor. "I am maintenance." Noah gave a wet, startled laugh. It was small. It helped. Caleb and Ranger entered the service chase 5 minutes later, moving behind the walls of the hospital through dust, cable bundles, and the hot copper smell of old pipes. Halfway up, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message contained a photo of Olivia and Noah from a security camera outside the OR. Under it were 6 words. "Do not make me ask twice." Ranger looked back at Caleb in the dark. Caleb turned off his flashlight. Ahead through the wall, Graham Whitaker began to speak. The 3rd floor of Harbor Point was colder than the rest of the hospital, as if administration had negotiated a separate climate for itself. Rain slid down the office windows in shining ropes, and the city lights of Norfolk blurred beyond the glass like candles seen through tears. Caleb stood inside the service chase behind the old records room and listened through the wall. Ranger stood beside him, one shoulder pressed to Caleb's leg, breath silent. The dog smelled men before Caleb heard them. 2 armed guards, 1 expensive cologne, 1 electrical burn from a laptop charger running hot, 1 cup of coffee gone bitter. Graham Whitaker was speaking in a calm voice that made Caleb think of polished conference tables and signed checks. Sloan is contained, yes, but Sloan was always meant to be containable. A pause. Someone else murmured, too low to catch. "No," Whitaker said. "Mercer will bring the collar, because people like him require something to protect." Caleb felt Ranger's body tense under his hand. "The nurse and the boy are enough." The words did not make Caleb angry. Anger was too loud for what they deserved. They made him clear. The old records room door opened with a soft complaint. Caleb slipped in behind shelving stacked with boxes no one had touched since the hospital changed logo designs. Dust silvered the air. Ranger's nose twitched. The administration suite shared a frosted glass wall with the records room. Light glowed through the blinds. Caleb could see movement on the other side, shadows passing one tall, and still too compact and restless. He took out his phone and started recording. Not for drama, for court. People like Whitaker believed truth became weaker when spoken softly. Caleb had learned that truth only needed to be preserved long enough to reach the right hands. He texted Rachel. Inside records. 3 in suite. Whitaker talking. Rachel answered almost immediately. Hold. Caleb did not smile, but Ranger looked up as if he had heard the shape of the word through the phone. We are very good at holding, Caleb whispered. Through the wall, Whitaker continued. The transfer ledgers are the problem. Caleb's pulse slowed. There it was. The after-action edits can be dismissed as operational confusion, and the route changes can be blamed on Sloan's shop. Another pause. But if Mercer has the original transfer ledger, the shell companies connect. The second voice was clearer now. To you. To assets managed by a family office that would prefer not to be named. That sounds like you. That sounds like a poor understanding of legal distance. Caleb let the phone capture every word. Ranger's ears shifted. Footsteps in the hall. Rachel's team, maybe. Or someone else. The old building settled around them with a sigh of pipes. Then a child's voice crackled through the administration office speaker. Mr. Caleb? Noah. Caleb's spine went cold. Whitaker had opened a live feed from the surgical floor camera and audio system. The man's voice warmed unpleasantly. Noah, your friend is listening. Caleb did not move. Ranger did. The dog took one step toward the glass wall, teeth showing. Caleb closed his hand around the collar. Noah's voice came again, small and trying hard. Mom says I should not talk to strangers. Olivia's voice followed, muffled and fierce. Noah, step back. Whitaker laughed softly. Mrs. Brooks has courage. Caleb heard a guard shift inside the suite. The man nearest the glass was close enough now that Caleb could see the outline of his shoulder through the blinds. Rachel texted again. Main hall covered. Warrant ready. Need probable cause on Whitaker. Caleb looked at the recording timer. They had enough for interest, maybe not enough for a cage. Whitaker's voice dropped. Tell Mercer I have people near the OR doors. Caleb knew that was possible. He also knew Pierce was there. The threat did what it was built to do anyway. It put Olivia and Noah in his mind so sharply he could almost feel the boy's yellow thread under his thumb. Bring the caller now, Whitaker said toward the speaker, or I stop being polite. Caleb stopped the recording, saved it, and sent it to Rachel. Then he stood. Ranger looked up at him. Showtime, Caleb whispered. The dog looked offended by the word. He preferred work. Caleb opened the records room door and stepped into the administrative hallway with Ranger at his side. At the far end, Rachel Monroe stood just out of sight of the suite entrance, 2 agents beside her. She saw Caleb and understood that he was about to do something she had not approved. Her expression promised a conversation later. Caleb knocked on the administration door. Inside, movement stopped. Whitaker opened it himself. He was in his late 50s, trim, gray-eyed, and dressed in a charcoal suit that had no business looking so fresh at 2:30 in the morning. His white shirt was open at the collar, and his face carried the calm confidence of a man accustomed to buying exits before rooms became locked. Behind him stood 2 guards in dark jackets, both trained, both watching Caleb's hands. Whitaker looked down at Ranger. A beautiful animal. Ranger stared back without flattery. He has opinions, Caleb said. So I see. Whitaker stepped aside. Come in. No. You are not in a position to negotiate from the hall. I negotiate better with exits. Whitaker smiled. You have been hiding in the walls of a hospital for 3 years, and you still had to threaten a child to get my attention. The smile thinned. The collar. Caleb unbuckled the old leather with slow fingers. Ranger stood perfectly still. Rachel watched from the hall, one hand near her weapon, waiting for the line between negotiation and arrest to become clean enough. Caleb held out the collar. One guard stepped forward to take it. Ranger did not move. That bothered Whitaker. It should have. The guard turned the collar over, found the thickened patch Noah had sewn, and cut into it with a small blade. Leather opened. Empty. The guard looked at Whitaker. Whitaker looked at Caleb. For the first time, uncertainty touched his face. Caleb reached down and tapped the metal name tag still hanging beneath Ranger's throat. Children are better at repairs than contractors, he said. Rachel stepped into the hall with her credentials raised. Graham Whitaker, step away from the dog. One guard moved. Ranger moved faster. The hallway exploded into motion. The guard hit the floor. Rachel's agents rushed the door. Whitaker stumbled backward and Caleb heard a gunshot crack from inside the suite. Then every light on the 3rd floor went out. Darkness fell over the 3rd floor so completely that even the rain seemed to pause against the windows. For one breath, Harbor Point became a building made of sound. A guard cursed. Rachel shouted for hands. Ranger's nails scraped tile. Someone slammed into a desk hard enough to crack wood. Caleb dropped low and reached for the dog, but Ranger was already gone, a black and sable shape moving through the blind space with the certainty of a nose that did not need light. Emergency strips blinked awake along the baseboards, thin and amber. The administration suite emerged in pieces, an overturned chair, papers drifting down. Whitaker moving toward the side office with one hand under his jacket. Rachel's agents had one guard pinned against the wall. The other guard rolled on the floor with Ranger locked onto his sleeve just above the wrist. The gun lay 2 feet away. Caleb kicked it under a cabinet. Ranger released only when Caleb gave the hand signal. Good. The dog huffed once, as if good was insufficient but acceptable. Rachel crossed the room toward Whitaker. Do not move. Whitaker stopped near the side office door. His expression had changed from polished calm to something colder and more efficient. The host was gone. The accountant of harm remained. Lieutenant Commander Monroe, he said, you are late. I brought paperwork. Paperwork burns. Evidence copies. Copies get challenged. Confessions help. His eyes flicked to Caleb's phone. Rachel saw it. So did Caleb. Whitaker understood too much too quickly. That made him dangerous in the way water was dangerous when it found cracks. From Caleb's radio, Pierce's voice broke through. Senior, we have movement near OR access. Caleb touched his earpiece. How many? 2 trying the west stair. Olivia and Noah. Secure. A pause. Hale is still in surgery. Whitaker heard enough to smile. You cannot be in every room, Mr. Mercer. Caleb looked at him. That is why I brought a dog. Ranger's head turned toward the side office. His ears lifted. The bent one trembled. Caleb followed the line. Not Whitaker. Behind Whitaker. The side office had a second exit into the old boardroom corridor. Caleb knew it because he had once fixed a ceiling leak there while 3 administrators argued about whether maintenance overtime counted as an emergency expense. Whitaker was close enough to bolt. Rachel stepped to block him. Whitaker moved anyway. He grabbed the laptop bag from the desk and shoved backward through the side door faster than his age and suit suggested. Rachel lunged. The bag strap tore. Whitaker vanished into the boardroom corridor with half the strap in Rachel's hand. "Go," Rachel said. Caleb and Ranger were already moving. The boardroom corridor was narrow, lined with portraits of donors whose painted smiles looked foolish under emergency lights. Whitaker ran like a man who had practiced exits more than apologies. He hit the stairwell door with his shoulder and disappeared downward. Caleb followed, one hand on the rail, Ranger 2 steps ahead, the old limp swallowed by urgency. Between floors, Whitaker fired once upward. The shot cracked against concrete. Caleb felt dust hit his cheek. Ranger did not slow. "Ranger, hold!" The dog stopped on the landing, shaking with fury, but obeying. That obedience had saved lives. It had also cost him pain. Caleb moved past him low and tight and saw Whitaker pushing through the second-floor door toward the sky bridge. The sky bridge connected administration to the parking garage, a glass tunnel over a service drive where rainwater ran in silver streams below. Wind battered the panels. Whitaker was halfway across when Caleb entered. The glass turned every light into a smear. Ranger came beside Caleb, muzzle low. "You do not want to do this on glass," Caleb called. Whitaker stopped and turned, breathing hard but still trying to look composed.
You confuse personal courage with legal outcome.
"No."
Caleb took a step. I confuse you with cornered.
Whitaker lifted the gun. Ranger froze. Caleb did too. The distance was bad. The glass was worse. Rain hammered the skybridge roof so loudly the world became percussion. "The tag," Whitaker said. "Remove it and slide it to me."
You already have Sloan.
Sloan is a signed door.
And you are the room.
Whitaker's mouth tightened. "Do you think a microdrive changes systems built by men with more money than your whole family has seen?" Caleb thought of Briggs laughing over bad coffee. He thought of Ranger dragging the interpreter through smoke. He thought of Olivia holding Noah back from fear with one arm.
"No," Caleb said. "But it changes tomorrow."
Whitaker's gun shifted a fraction. Ranger saw the wrist move before Caleb did. The dog launched. The gun fired. The shot shattered a panel above them, and rain burst into the sky bridge in a cold spray. Ranger hit Whitaker at the hip, not the arm, driving him sideways into the metal frame. The gun skidded. Caleb crossed the distance and pinned Whitaker's wrist under his boot. Whitaker gasped, more offended than hurt. Rachel entered the sky bridge behind them with both hands on her weapon. "Graham Whitaker, you are under federal detention." Whitaker looked at Caleb from the wet floor.
"For a dog collar."
Caleb crouched, unclipped the metal name tag from Ranger, and held it in his palm. It was scratched cheap and warm from the dog's body.
"For what men hid because they thought no one important would carry it."
Rachel took out an evidence pouch. Her hands were steady. Caleb placed the tag inside. The instant the seal closed, his phone rang. "Bennett," he answered. "Mercer," she said, and her voice was too controlled. "Hale's pressure just dropped." Caleb looked at Ranger. The dog stood in broken glass and rain chest, heaving eyes bright.
"How bad?" "Bad enough that I am calling you."
Caleb started running before the line went dead. Behind him, Whitaker laughed once in the custody of agents. Even if he lives, it does not erase what happened. Caleb did not turn back. He knew that already. Some things were not erased. They were carried until someone strong enough helped set them down. The storm broke open again over Norfolk, harder than before, as if the sky had been saving one last argument. On the surgical floor, Harbor Point shook with thunder, while the operating room doors opened and swallowed Caleb Ranger and all the fear that had chased them back from the sky bridge. Caleb stopped at the sterile line. Bennett stood just inside, gown streaked, mask up, eyes fixed on him. Behind her, Dr. Angela Park worked over Hale with a focus so complete the rest of the world might have been a rumor. "You cannot come farther," Bennett said. "I know." "Then listen fast." She gave him numbers, not feelings. Pressure falling, bleeding controlled in one quadrant, not another. Possible missed vessel near the liver. Transfusion running behind, need. Hale's body was still fighting, but the fight had become expensive. Caleb listened the way he had listened to radios under fire, finding the part that mattered beneath noise. Did he get cold? Bennett blinked. What?
Core temperature. Dropping. Coagulopathy. Park looked up from the table.
We know. Warm from below, too. Bennett pointed toward the warming cabinet. We have blankets. Not enough. Caleb turned to a surgical tech. There is a forced air warming unit in old post-op storage. Bennett stared at him. That unit was decommissioned. It was ignored. Does it work? If it is still angry with me, yes. Park's voice cut through. Get it. Caleb looked at Ranger. Stay. Ranger sat at the OR threshold, wet fur dripping onto a towel someone had thrown down, eyes fixed on Caleb. The dog hated staying. He did it anyway. Caleb ran to old post-op storage with Ryan Vale on his heels. Vale was shaking now, the adrenaline wearing thin and leaving the young sailor with too much room inside his own head. Senor, if he dies... Carry the left side. If he dies, all this. Carry the left side, Vale. The young man grabbed the dusty warming unit, and together they hauled it into the hall. It smelled like plastic dust and a faint old scorch that did not inspire confidence. Caleb slammed the side panel once, then twice. The unit coughed alive. Vale stared. You fix things by threatening them. Only the honest ones. They wheeled it back. Bennett took the hose, passed it through, and Park gave one curt nod that meant the machine had earned its place in the night. Caleb waited outside with Ranger Vale, Olivia, Noah, Pierce, and Rachel. It was an odd congregation, a nurse and her son, a young sailor with blood on his sleeves, a master chief with rainwater drying on tactical gear, a federal investigator holding a sealed evidence pouch, a former SEAL in maintenance blues, a dog who had just helped arrest a man wealthier than most hospitals. The chapel was one floor below, but prayer did not require architecture. Olivia held Noah's hand and whispered so softly Caleb could not hear the words. Noah watched Ranger. Is Commander Hale going to heaven? He asked. The adults went still in that particular way adults do when a child steps directly onto holy ground. Caleb crouched in front of him. I do not know where he is going tonight. Noah nodded, trying to be brave. But people are trying hard to keep him here. Yes. Ranger, too. Ranger, especially. The dog lifted his head at his name and thumped his tail once. It was not dramatic. It was enough. Rachel moved beside Caleb. Whitaker is contained. Contained is not convicted. The tag is clean chain of custody. Good. I opened it with evidence tech present. Caleb looked at her. She continued. The microdrive has the ledger. The words did not make him feel lighter. Not yet. All of it? More than Hale hoped. Rachel's voice stayed professional, but her eyes did not. 14 months of transfers, shell companies, evacuation route, purchases altered, supply contracts, and names. Whitaker. Whitaker Sloan Keene, and others I need a locked room before I say aloud. Caleb leaned back against the wall. The tile was cold through his shirt. For 3 years the thing had lived under Ranger's name. Every shift, every hallway, every time Noah scratched the dog's neck or Olivia smiled at the collar's crooked yellow thread. It had been so heavy for something so small. Rachel lowered her voice. You did the right thing keeping it separate. I did the only thing left. Sometimes those are the same. Martin Keene was brought past them by an agent 5 minutes later. His face looked emptied. Not innocent. Emptied. He saw Caleb and stopped. I did not know they would hurt anyone. Olivia made a sound like disbelief had become a cough. Keene looked at her, then away. They said it was access for an internal review. Caleb said nothing. Keene rushed to fill the silence. They had board connections, contract authority, legal letters. And money, Rachel said. Keene's mouth closed. And money, he admitted. Noah looked at him with the clean devastation children reserve for adults who fail in simple ways. You let bad people into the hospital. Keene flinched. I did not think of it that way. That is why it worked, Caleb said. The agent led Keene away. Noah leaned against Olivia. Ranger put his chin on the boy's knee. Inside the OR, voices rose, then settled. Another long minute passed. Bennett came out. She had removed her mask and her face looked 10 years older than it had at the start of the night. No one spoke. She looked at Ryan Vale first. He is alive. Vale covered his mouth with one hand. Pierce turned toward the wall and bowed his head. Bennett kept going because doctors learned that relief needed details before it became safe. He lost his spleen and Park repaired the liver bleed. Recovery? Caleb asked. Long. But possible. Probable. The word came into the hallway like dawn arriving early. Olivia closed her eyes. Noah whispered, Thank you. God, with the plain certainty of someone who had not yet learned to be embarrassed by gratitude. Caleb looked down at Ranger. The dog was staring at him. Caleb touched the wet fur between his ears. Good work. This time Ranger accepted the praise. For nearly 10 seconds nobody moved. Then Rachel's radio cracked to life. Monroe, we have Sloan requesting counsel and Whitaker refusing transport without medical evaluation. Rachel sighed. Of course he is. Bennett wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist. If he asks for a doctor, send him someone petty. Caleb looked at her. Bennett looked back. Not unprofessional. No, just petty. Understood. For the first time all night, Caleb laughed. It surprised him more than anyone. The laugh was small, rough, and gone quickly, but Olivia heard it. She looked at him as if a locked door had opened a crack. Beyond the windows, the rain began to thin. Not stop. Thin. That would have to do. By 4:15 in the morning, the storm had moved east toward the Atlantic, leaving Norfolk washed cold and shining under the last of the night. Harbor Point Medical Center did not sleep, but it had settled into the exhausted rhythm that follows crisis when people speak softly, because loudness feels disrespectful to survival. The evidence transfer happened in the staff education room because the chapel was too small, and the conference room was now a crime scene. Rachel Monroe sat at a folding table with two evidence technicians, a laptop not connected to any network, and the metal name tag sealed in a clear pouch. Caleb stood on the other side, with Ranger pressed against his knee. Ranger had accepted a towel from Olivia and rejected 3 attempts to be examined by a nurse. He allowed Noah to dab rainwater from his bent ear. No one else. Rachel opened the pouch under camera. The name tag looked even smaller on the table. Ranger. The letters were scratched from years of work weather, and a dog who believed fences were suggestions. An evidence technician used a fine tool to slide the back plate free. Inside was the microdrive wrapped in a thin layer of waterproof film. Noah inhaled sharply. That was in there? Caleb nodded. The whole time? The whole time. Noah looked at Ranger with awe. Ranger yawned. It was a magnificent dismissal of human drama. Rachel connected the drive to the isolated laptop. Caleb watched the screen populate with folders. Numbers, dates, names. Documents he had not opened in 3 years because knowing they existed had been heavy enough. Rachel's face changed as she read. Professional control held, but only because she forced it to. This is it, she said. Pierce stood behind her, arms folded, jaw tight. Enough, Rachel scrolled. Enough to reopen every compromised operation Hale was investigating. Sloan. Direct approval chain on altered evacuation schedules. Whitaker, financial beneficiary through 3 shell companies and a medical logistics fund. Keene, local access facilitator. Caleb looked toward the hallway where Keene had been taken. The man had wanted a quiet career and had sold quiet to people who used it as cover. There were many kinds of betrayal. Some wore uniforms, some wore lanyards. Olivia stood near the door with Noah asleep against her side. He had finally lost his fight with wakefulness and collapsed into the boneless trust of childhood, one hand still resting on Ranger's back. Olivia looked at Caleb. What happens now? Rachel answered gently. Now we make it official. That sounds small. It is not. Caleb knew what she meant. Official was the difference between a story whispered in a hallway and a record that could not be shoved into a drawer. Official was slow, flawed, and sometimes cowardly. But when done right, it was a door that stayed open. At 5 in the morning, Sloan was escorted past the education room. He had requested counsel refused questions and regained the dry composure that had fooled better rooms than this one. He stopped when he saw Caleb. The agents let him because Rachel gave the smallest nod. Sloan looked at Ranger first, then at the name tag on the table. All that time, he said. "On the dog." Caleb said nothing. Sloane's face tightened. "You could have come forward." "I did." "You could have fought harder." The old sentence, the one powerful people offered when the person they had crushed survived. Caleb looked at him then. "I fought by making sure you could not find it." Sloane's mouth moved once. No sound came. That was enough. The agents led him away. Whitaker came next, not by design, but because the night had developed a taste for arrangement. He sat on a transport chair with a bandage at his temple and his wrists secured in front of him. He looked less polished now, not broken. Men like Whitaker broke slowly, if at all. But the suit was wet, one sleeve torn, and his face showed the fatigue of a man whose exits had begun closing faster than he could buy new ones. "Mr. Mercer," he said. "Mr. Whitaker, you understand this will take years." "Good." Whitaker blinked. "Good." "Years are hard to bribe all at once." Rachel's mouth twitched. Whitaker's eyes moved to Olivia and Noah. Something cold crossed Caleb's body before thought arrived. Ranger stood. No growl. He did not need one. Whitaker looked away first. The agent wheeled him on. When the hallway cleared, Olivia exhaled in a shaky burst. "I hate him." "That is reasonable." "I know I should not." "You can work on that after breakfast." She stared at Caleb for a second, then laughed. It came out broken and tired and real. Noah stirred against her. "Is it morning?" "Almost," Olivia said. "Did Ranger save everyone?" Rachel looked at Caleb. Pierce looked at the ceiling. Caleb looked down at Ranger, who had found a dropped cracker under the table and was negotiating with it privately. "Ranger helped," Caleb said. Noah nodded as if that matched his understanding of the universe. "He is a good dog." Ranger ate the cracker. "Morally complicated," Caleb said. Olivia smiled. The smile reached her eyes, though it had to pass through exhaustion to get there. Bennett appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Caleb. "This is terrible." "Then why give it to me?" "Because you look like a man who has earned terrible coffee." He accepted it. The cup was lukewarm and bitter, perfectly hospital. Bennett leaned against the doorframe. "I owe you an apology." Caleb looked at her. "You owe Hale a discharge plan he will hate." "I can do both." She took a breath. "I treated you like furniture." "A useful category." "Do not make this easier." "I was not." She nodded once. "Senior Chief Mercer, thank you." The title did not hit like it had earlier. It arrived quieter. Not as a summons, but as a return. Caleb looked at the coffee. "Caleb is fine. Tonight." Tonight, Caleb is fine. Outside the room, the first shift began to arrive, carrying umbrellas, lunch bags, and no idea why half the hospital looked like it had survived a war and a plumbing emergency at the same time. Keene's office was sealed. Administration was blocked. The ER had bullet holes in a ceiling tile and a story it would be telling badly by noon. Life inconsiderate and faithful continued. At 6:10 in the morning, Dr. Park came down from the ICU step-down corridor. She looked at Caleb with the flat exhaustion of a surgeon who had won, but did not plan to celebrate until later. "Hale is stable." Pierce closed his eyes. Ryan Vale cried without sound. Bennett sat down in the nearest chair, as if her bones had finally read the schedule. Caleb touched Ranger's collar, now empty of its secret. For the first time in 3 years, the leather was only leather. The name was only a name. That should have felt like loss. Instead, it felt like air. Morning came gray and clean over Norfolk, with gulls crying above the hospital roof and water shining along the curbs. Harbor Point Medical Center faced the new day with plywood over one broken skybridge panel, federal tape on 3 doors, and coffee brewing, as if coffee alone could restore civic order. Commander Thomas Hale woke on the 3rd day. He was paler than Caleb remembered, smaller somehow without the armor of command around him. But his eyes were clear when they found the man standing beside the bed with a German shepherd at his feet. "Mercer," Hale said. "Commander, you look terrible. You should see the other administrators." Hale's mouth moved into a tired smile. It cost him, but he spent it anyway. Ranger rested his chin on the bed rail. Hale looked at him. "And you?" Ranger thumped his tail once. Hale turned back to Caleb. "Pierce says it worked." "Depends which part." "The evidence." "Rachel has it." "Sloan." "Custody." "Whitaker." "Very expensive custody." Hale closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was grief in the relief. "Briggs." Caleb did not answer immediately. The name deserved space. "His report is being corrected." Hale swallowed. "All of them?" "All the names Rachel could verify." "Good." There are words too small for what they carry. Good was one of them. It had to do. Hale looked toward the window where morning light softened the blinds. "I should have found you sooner. You were busy getting shot. Before that." Caleb looked down at Ranger. The dog's fur had been brushed by Noah so thoroughly one side looked sleeker than the other. "Before that, I was not easy to find. You were fixing boilers under my nose." "Not your nose." "Close enough." Hale's hand shifted on the blanket. "Your record is under formal correction." Caleb said nothing. "Full restoration of rank, commendations, and separation status." The room remained quiet. Ranger's breathing filled the lower air. "There will be a public citation." Caleb looked at him then. Hale held his gaze. "Your name, fully stated." For 3 years, Caleb had thought he wanted that. Then he had thought he did not. Now standing in the thin light of an ICU room, with Ranger leaning against his boot, he understood that wanting was not the point. Some things had to be named, because silence had been used as a weapon. "All right," he said. Hale nodded as if he understood what the small answer cost. Then he reached with painful care toward the bedside table and touched a folder. "There is something else. You are supposed to be resting." "I am resting aggressively." "Looks inefficient." "Read the folder." Caleb took it. The cover sheet bore Navy letterhead and a title long enough to prove several committees had been involved. Tactical Medical Evacuation Integrity and Response Unit. Caleb read it twice. That name needs work. Hale smiled again. The unit does too. Caleb turned the pages. Training Doctrine. Medical Evacuation Security. Field Casualty Integrity. Joint Hospital Response Protocols. A bridge between the world that bled in dust and the world that waited with fluorescent lights and clean sheets. You want me to build it. I want you to lead the people who build it. Civilian attached, if you want. Operational authority, within reason. Caleb looked over the folder. Your reason or mine? We can fight about that when I can sit up. Fair. Hale's expression softened. You spent 3 years protecting something that protected a lot of people, after all. It did not protect Briggs. No. The honesty hurt less than comfort would have. But it may protect the next team. Caleb closed the folder. That was the thing about survival. It did not bring back the dead. It gave the living a job. 1 week later. Harbor Point held a small ceremony in the rooftop garden because the administration conference room still smelled faintly of smoke and federal printers. The morning was bright, windy, and kind. Olivia stood with Noah near the raised planters, both dressed for spring, though the air had not fully agreed. Noah had made Ranger a new tag on a small engraving kit Olivia regretted buying almost immediately. It read, Ranger Mercer, official good dog. Caleb told him official was a complicated word. Noah told him that was why adults needed help. Dr. Bennett came, as did Dr. Park, Maria from pediatrics, Ryan Vale, Pierce, Rachel, and half the night staff who had suddenly discovered strong memories of always respecting maintenance. Caleb let them have that mercy. People rewrote themselves after fear. Some revisions were worth allowing. Rachel handed Olivia an envelope with a formal commendation for her actions during the lockdown. Olivia protested for exactly 4 seconds before Noah elbowed her gently and whispered, "Take the paper, Mom." She took it. Bennett stood before the gathered staff and did not make a long speech. That was good, because Bennett's best quality had never been decoration. She said Caleb's full name. She said Senior Chief. She said Ranger's name, too, and Ranger sat down at the sound of applause as if accepting praise was an administrative burden. People laughed. Caleb did not cry. He came closer than he preferred. Afterward, Olivia found him near the roof railing. The river wind moved loose strands of hair across her face. "So," she said. "So? You are leaving." "Maybe." "That folder says maybe?" "The folder says several things, mostly in government language." "But you are thinking yes." Caleb looked across Norfolk toward the cranes and gray water and the unseen naval base beyond. "I am thinking there is work I know how to do." Olivia nodded. Her eyes shone, but she smiled anyway. "Good. That is all." "No." She looked at him fully. "But I am trying to be brave and mature." "How is that going?" "Unevenly." He smiled. She did too. Noah ran up before the moment could decide what it was becoming. "Mr. Caleb Ranger stole a muffin." "Did you see him?" "Not exactly." "Then we should be careful with accusations." Ranger appeared behind Noah with a blueberry on his whisker. Olivia crossed her arms. "Circumstantial." Caleb looked at the dog. The dog looked at the skyline. "Strongly circumstantial." They laughed, then the 4 of them on a roof that had once shaken under a black helicopter and now held sunlight, wind, and a dog pretending not to chew. 3 weeks later, Caleb worked his last maintenance shift at Harbor Point. He fixed the pediatric heater one more time, replaced the chapel bulb before it burned out, and left a note on the generator panel that said it preferred the right side tap when starting. At 7 in the morning. He walked out through the front entrance instead of the basement. Ranger walked at his left. Olivia and Noah waited by the curb with 2 coffees and a paper bag that smelled suspiciously of muffins. "What now?" Noah asked. Caleb looked back at Harbor Point. For years, the hospital had been a hiding place, then a battlefield, then a witness. Now, it was simply a place he had worked, suffered, laughed, and been found. Now we build something, Caleb said. Noah considered that. Can Ranger be in charge? He already thinks he is, Ranger sneezed. Olivia handed Caleb a coffee. Their fingers touched, and neither of them moved away quickly. The morning opened around them, ordinary and bright. Caleb had his name back, his record back, and the strange, frightening gift of a future that did not require hiding. He had Ranger's shoulder against his leg. He had Noah talking about engraving a better official tag. He had Olivia beside him, not behind him, not safely out of danger, but beside him. That was the difference. Some people had mistaken his silence for emptiness. Some had mistaken his work clothes for his worth. Some had mistaken a patched dog collar for sentiment and never wondered why a man trained to notice everything kept touching it when rooms went quiet. They had been wrong. Caleb Mercer stepped into the morning with both hands free. Ranger went with him. And the city, washed clean by rain, made room. Sometimes God hides strength in the places people overlook. He may place courage in the quiet man, fixing a light loyalty in an old dog with a crooked ear, or grace in a tired nurse who keeps showing up because someone needs her hands. This story reminds us that being unseen by people does not mean being forgotten by God. Caleb waited a long time for the truth to be ready, but he did not let bitterness make his heart useless. Olivia protected her son and still found room to trust. Ranger could not speak one word, yet his loyalty preached louder than many sermons. If you have ever felt ignored, underestimated, or pushed aside, hold on to this. The Lord sees the faithful work done in basements, hospital halls, kitchens, bedrooms, and lonely seasons where nobody claps. Truth may be delayed, but it is not dead. Love may be quiet, but it is not weak. And sometimes, the very thing others dismiss becomes the vessel God uses to bring light back into the room. If this story touched your heart, comment Amen. Share it with someone who needs to remember that quiet faith still matters. May God bless you, protect your family, and give you courage for the work only you can do.